Here we go. All right. And I'm going to share my screen and we're good to go. Yes. Yes. Awesome. Thank you for being here. I love the little hearts and stuff. You guys are the best. This is rooted in resilience, finding strength in a changing world. Love it. My name's Lisa. I know most of you quite well. I'll introduce myself a little more in a moment. So I want to welcome you here, whoever you are, however you are today. I'm guessing you're here for a few reasons, right? You're probably here because you're a helper or a healer, maybe even professionally. You've probably been through some trauma yourself, true for most of us on this planet, and you probably support people or care for people for a living. Yeah. And I want you to know, however you feel today, whatever's going on in your life, whatever's going on in the world, you're welcome here exactly as you are. And I want to set the intention that we're here collectively to support and uplift one another. So we all have our stuff and we all have our moments, but I want to create a space here that is really conducive for healing. So I'll invite you into that with me. All right. We've met, a lot of us we've met already, but some of you might be logging on for the first time. My name's Lisa Danilchuk. You pronounce my last name Danilchuk. It's a Ukrainian last name. Big love to my Ukrainian family and people. And I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. I'm also an experienced registered yoga teacher and a certified yoga therapist and a continuing education provider. Give you some education today. We don't have CEUs. Somebody asked about that. We don't have CEUs for this free training, but we do have CEUs for other things. I founded the Center for Yoga and Trauma Recovery. I'm the author of Yoga for Trauma Recovery. I think maybe you can see it tiny over there on my bookshelf. I've written a few books, also How You Can Heal and Embodied Healing, my first book that came out in 2015. There's this weird little hair in my eye I need to get out. I do want to say that I'm giving away a free copy of Yoga for Trauma Recovery at the end of this call. So if you don't already have one, stick around. You might get the chance to win one. You will get the chance to win one. I was also president of the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation in 2002. Yes, celebrations. The ISSTD. I will see some of you very soon at the conference happening this March in Boston, this month in Boston. Also went to Harvard, the Graduate School of Education, and UCLA. Lots of love to those of you down in LA, still recovering from the fires. A hearty go Bruins. And those of you who are still living in the Boston area, I will be at my old favorite coffee shop from when I was a grad student when I'm out at that conference for ISSTD. So lots of things coming together. Looking forward to that. And here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to start by picking one simple way to resource yourself right now. Those of you who've been with me for a while, you know this practice. We're going to repeat it every day. Then we'll move into the APA definition of resilience and what we can learn from the Lahaina banyan tree. We'll cover 4 steps to help you root into resilience today, every day. And then I'll talk about the Yoga for Trauma certification. We're celebrating 10 years this year. I cannot believe it. I started this program in 2015. I've had the help of some assistants and volunteers and folks over time. So I want to bow to you and send you a lot of love if you've been involved in this program. Extra shout out to Alexis, who's my current assistant as well. And then we'll do some questions if there are any questions and close with resources and that free book. Sound good? All right, let's go. So let's talk about resourcing for resilience. Resourcing is a practice where we connect with something neutral or positive, right, with the hopes of creating some stability in our nervous system, in our body, in our brain, in our soul, right? A lot of times we get very drawn into, for anthropological and neurological reasons, we get very drawn into problems and our brains want to problem solve and our nervous system comes along for the ride. But oftentimes there's some access points to peace right within our own setting, right? So I hope you're in a place that's safe enough where there's some access point to feeling soothed or safe or secure or peaceful. So I'm going to invite you right now to look around and take a moment to pick something, either neutral or if you can, positive, that feels like it could support you in connecting to this moment, in connecting perhaps to the earth. And consider the different senses you might use for this. So you might use touch, my cool yellow water bottle, sight, looking at the color. You might use taste, taking a sip of something, or smell. I always have essential oils. You may or may not. Give yourself a whiff. Something that anchors you to the moment, neutral or positive, ideally. So take a moment to choose that thing. And then we'll take another moment to connect with it, to notice what about it feels positive, to notice your relationship to it. Is it something you can hold? Is it something you're sitting on? Is it something you see far away? And then when you connect with this thing, if there's any little sense of safety or comfort or ease, or maybe even a spark of joy, can you notice how that shows up in your body? So remember earlier, I said we can get drawn into problems. Our bodies go along for the ride. We're doing the opposite right now. We're really resourcing and rooting ourselves in resilience as we start this training together. So noticing in your body where that like, or or whatever it is for you shows up. And then once you have that feeling, another breath or moment just to anchor it in. And to know that you can carry it with you for the rest of this training, throughout your day, throughout your week. I've done this so many times teaching in this exact spot, and I've picked new things. Not every time. I pick the plant behind my computer a lot, but I pick the trees out the window a lot. But I also started noticing new, what about the texture of the wall? Or what about this? Or what about that? Or what about this little shaker egg that I used the other day? So it can be a great mental practice to come back to just choosing something in the moment wherever you are. And the more you repeat those environments, the more anchors and resources you have all around you. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10. All right. So we're here today to talk about resilience. I'm someone who always likes to start with a definition. Are we talking about the same thing? What do we mean by that, right? When we say a word or we're using a term, what do we actually mean by that? So let's define resilience. And this is the definition provided by the American Psychological Association. Okay. Resilience is the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. Okay. Lots of words there. You notice I'm highlighting adapting, also want to highlight adjusting, right? Adapting to challenge, adjusting to demands. A number of factors contribute, this is still the definition, a number of factors contribute to how well people adapt to adversities, predominant among them, the ways in which individuals view and engage with the world. So this is where reflecting on our worldview, which trauma can impact, right? Noticing the lens through which we're seeing things, getting to know other people, comparing, contrasting, getting familiar with your lens can be helpful. The availability and quality of social resources, and specific coping strategies. That got repeated. I think I was trying to delete something else. Psychological research demonstrates that the resources and skills associated with more positive adaptation, aka greater resilience, can be cultivated and practiced. So the common thing I see, and even if you do a little search for resilience, one of the first terms you'll see is bounce back. I actually had a producer on my podcast who I worked with early on who wanted to rename my podcast. Podcast is called How We Can Heal to Bouncing Back. And I had to have that. She had all these ideas for images and all these ideas for names we were going to rebrand. And I was like, no. And I was like, I don't want to be rigid here, but there's a reason. Again, I want us like, let's understand why we choose the words we do, how we can heal. This is meant to be, here's some options and pathways for healing. Here's the ways people heal. Here's the way people study healing. Let's find ways forward is what my podcast is about, right? Now, bounce back. How do we cultivate bouncing back, right? Okay, semantics, maybe we could go like, oh, okay, well, resilience, we can cultivate bouncing back through resilience. But I think a lot of times we assume that resilience is something we have or don't have, which is not true. Look at this definition. It's something we practice, something we can earn, something we can cultivate over time. It's our response to the challenge. It's not just a natural bouncing back. Now, there is something here about what our worldview is, what our resources are, what our coping strategies are when something happens. So someone might, quote unquote, have greater resilience if they already have those things when the trauma occurs. But the takeaway I want to highlight today is that this can be so much more about habit, so much more about cultivating strategies to come back and caring for yourself. All right? Caring for yourself and caring for each other. So let's take a lesson from the banyan tree in Lahaina. Some of you have been to Hawaii, been to Maui. Many of you are familiar with Maui and Hawaii and the Lahaina banyan tree, which unfortunately was highly impacted by the fires there in August of last year. The year before last, we're in 2025. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about what happened with the banyan tree. I'm going to show an image of it right after the fire in a moment. So heads up if that's something that would be really upsetting for you. It's still sad for me to see, but I wasn't there when it happened. If you were and you want to take a moment to look away, I get it. Okay. But this is what we can learn. In the first few days after the fires, back in August of 2023, workers soaked the tree's soil in 5,000 to 10,000 gallons of water a day. That's a lot of water. All right, stay with me. They also began treating the tree with what they called compost tea, a nutrient-filled cocktail containing kelp, worm castings, and sea minerals. It's a lot of love for that tree, right? By mid-September, about a month after the fires, new leaves had begun to sprout. Officials started posting videos and showing small sections of green emerging and charred bark and leaves falling away. So this has become a symbol of resilience for the people in Lahaina who were highly impacted. There was a lot of loss with these fires of people, of land, of property, change of community spaces. It's a very sad experience, right? This is a trauma, definitely. So here's the Lahaina banyan tree just days after the fires. And you can see a lot of ash, a lot of dark color. It looks like the tree might be done, right? Like the fires might have taken it. And this is how it can feel during and right after a trauma for us psychologically as well. Like maybe we don't know, right? I mean, we're still maybe standing or alive, but highly, highly impacted. I want to say something and I'm going to move on to the next slide before I say it, just to move on from that image, just in case. I saw a conversation. Someone else I had on my podcast had posted a conversation around this sentiment: "What doesn't kill us makes us stronger." And if when we look at that image of the tree, it's like, I don't know. In that moment, right? I don't know if the fire didn't kill the tree. Is it stronger? No, it's really impacted. So I think there's something important about acknowledging the pain, acknowledging the harm, acknowledging what we would call a negative impact, harmful impact, before we go on to talk about growth and post-traumatic growth, right? We're not focusing on post-traumatic growth today, but we are focusing on resilience. They overlap. So I want to highlight that resilience takes time. And there's so many different layers of trauma these days that we're more aware of than we were in the past. So cultivating resilience individually and collectively can feel like a really big task, and it is. So just like anything, we want to pace ourselves, but let's keep taking a lesson from the banyan tree. So soon after September, vertical tubes will deliver nutrient-rich compost to the tree, while an irrigation system will help keep the roots healthy. Experts will have to carefully monitor the tree for years, clearing away unhealthy sections and helping a new canopy flourish. Just want to go back. Vertical tubes of nutrient-dense compost. That's like an irrigation system. There's a lot happening, right? They have also taken dozens of cuttings from the tree, which are now growing in pots. And the hope there is to plant those in the vacant northwest corner of the lot, those of you that are familiar, where many of the trees perished, where they did not survive. There was no livable tissue left. Okay, so this image is a little more uplifting. This is the tree starting to grow back. So when we talk about resilience as bouncing back, maybe in the super fast forwarded 100, 200-year version of this, it'll look like the tree bounced back. But if we break that down in time and we go through everything we've talked about just now, how much effort, 5 to 10,000 gallons of water saturating the tree's roots, nutrient dense compost with worm casings, vertical tubes delivering nutrient rich compost to the tree, experts carefully monitoring, right? Dozens of cuttings to strategically place them back. Now, this has become a symbol of resilience. So all this effort also carries like an archetype with it almost for the people of Lahaina. And I know there's disagreement. Not everyone feels the same way or thinks the same thing, because I know this tree and when it was planted and who it was planted by, there's a whole conversation there. But the tree coming back after the fires for many people has become a symbol of resilience. And I just want to highlight how much care is going into this tree's recovery and how much care we need as humans to move through hard times. It's not just a rubber band snapping back into place, especially when we're talking about serious harm, especially when we're talking about really significant trauma. It's a long, ongoing, skillful response over time to the harm that's done, that's getting the tree, in this case, exactly what it needs, when it needs it, monitoring its response, working with a team of people, right? There's so much happening to create this resilience. So let's talk about how we as humans can root into our own resilience, can hold a vision of resilience for ourselves, our communities, and each other. There's our roots going into the earth. We're going to go through these 4 steps. I'll break them down in much more detail as we go. The first step is to anchor your mind in a vision of health. The second is to understand how your nervous system responds to threat and trauma. The third is to tap into your body's wisdom, create a trauma-informed movement or breath practice. It doesn't have to be yoga, but y'all know I love some yoga. And then to get support with the hard stuff. Again, the tree isn't just growing back on its own. Maybe it would have, but it's getting a lot of help, and you don't need to do this alone either, especially if you're a provider and you're going through your own stuff as you're helping other people. You don't need to do this alone, okay? And you can find the support that's right for you. It doesn't have to look a certain way. So our first step is to anchor our minds in a vision of health. I'm going to invite you to go there with me. What is your vision of health? And I'm going to invite you to start by picking a scope. And you could start with just yourself and maybe one aspect of your life right now. Maybe there's a problem or there's something that still feels like it's a result of a trauma you experienced early in life, and it's like not quite feeling resolved or whole or healthy or healed, quote unquote. So you could go there, or you could think about maybe the people you're serving, a specific population in the world. And if you really want to go macro and just think of the whole world, bring it, okay? But I'm going to invite you to just pick a scope, and you can do that as I go through the instructions here. Okay. This is something called dream storming. You might have heard of it on the How We Can Heal podcast. Dr. Jennifer Gomez coined this term. She and I talked about it on the podcast. I always want to credit her, but I use this all the time now because I love it so much. We're going to dreamstorm, which is different from brainstorming. There's a quote, I should have brought it today, that's something around, and I can't remember who it is, but like a problem cannot be resolved from the consciousness that created it, right? We need to go to a different level to access solutions sometimes. So that's what dreamstorming does. It takes us different than brainstorming. Brainstorming is just like problem solving in the moment. Oh, I have an idea. Maybe we could plant some more trees to help with drawing down carbon. Yeah, right. That's a great idea. Brainstorm. Okay. What about going to the far reaches of what health would look like? Going to what would this look like if this weren't even a problem anymore? What would it look like if in 100 years the banyan tree were flourishing? What would it look like if, and for me, 5 years, I didn't have these PTSD symptoms anymore? What would it look like for me if the population I'm serving felt fully supported in the system that it's in? Okay, so pick your scope. First thought, best thought, usually, right? If you're like, oh, I don't know, just pick one. What does health look like to you? Your individual health, or maybe this community or a larger scale? What does health look like to you? And I'd love, love, love if you put any thoughts that come to mind, any ideas, any dream storms. It doesn't have to be fully thought out. It could just be a word into the chat. What does health look like to you? Now, when Dr. Gomez and I were on the podcast, we were speaking about sexual abuse, specifically with African Americans in the United States, but extends in further context as well. And we had this moment of like, what if that wasn't a thing? What if people didn't have to worry about being abused? What? Like, what if people felt their inherent worth acknowledged across systems? Like, this is the level we're going. We're going like beyond, beyond. Sometimes it feels utopian. Sometimes it feels like impossible, and that's okay. All right, community care, resilience, care, nurturing. Yes, no abuse. A sense of thriving without struggle. Thriving, I love that word. Thriving. Ease. Yes. So thinking of those feelings, the image, the words, and I'm going to invite you for a moment in your own mind, or if you have the time to type it in, you're welcome to, please. What would your life look like in full recovery from trauma? What would this group's life look like in full recovery from trauma? Acknowledgement. Yes. Yeah. Recognition, right? Inclusion. Feeling safe. Joy. Joy. Access. Connection. Justice. I'm going to add one coming to my mind, care, right? I feel like in my mind, full trauma recovery, everybody felt cared for. Being able to sleep. Yes, not feeling like I have to stay awake. Yes. And that vigilance of caring for someone else, right? Like, oh, I'm going to have to, are they okay? Are they okay? Are they okay? Are they okay? I can relate to that as a parent, especially of a newborn, like, is she breathing? Is she okay? Is she okay? But when someone's ill or you're caretaking, yeah, is that person okay? Is that person okay? Like, what about the ease of knowing that someone's all right, that they have the support they need? All right, one more thing here. What would the world look like if there were just less trauma, right? How can we prevent harm in the first place? How do people live best together? So I'm going to ask you to just go another layer out and think again, like another level up of joy, of thriving, of care, of access. And let's see if we can get specific here, right? Like for a specific population, for you, like this last example, being able to sleep, super specific, right? So what would the world look like with less trauma? How can we prevent harm? And I have a strong opinion. I really feel like if mothers and parents were invested in, if parents and caretakers of young children were supported, and more integrated economically, I think that would help a lot, because so much of what we see with developmental trauma happens from a young age, from people not having access to caregivers. Maybe caregivers love them, but they're out working really hard and not available, right? How do people live best together? These are big questions. So you can allow them to take root, can allow this dream storm to continue. But the reason we're starting here is because we don't want to get stuck just brainstorming around trauma. We want to know that there's another level of healing, of integration that we can access, because sometimes, like dream storming, once we get there, we can pull that in instead of trying to like climb a little ladder out of where we are. We can go, ooh, that feeling, ooh, that idea. Let me bring that to life through my work, through my daily practices, through my resourcing, right? Like we did earlier. Maybe you're connecting with something that makes you feel like you're thriving every morning. Okay. Big questions. Thank you for sharing your answers here. More women in position of power and leadership. Yeah, definitely more representation across the board. Yes. So people in power reflect people across the world. Thank you. So we start with that dream storm. Oh, what would this look like? And I'd invite you, Carrie, what would that feel like if there was more representation, if there were more women in power, if people who were in leadership did reflect people in general across the board, across the world? How would that feel? How would it feel different? How might it feel better? How might it feel supportive for you or for the people you're working with? So once we have that and we're tapping into those, that would actually feel different. Like literally when I was interviewing Jennifer Gomez, I think she got goosebumps. I got goosebumps. I got the little like, oh my God. It's so basic to expect this, like that we would be included and worthy, but wow, now that we're talking about it, I just like stood up a little straighter and took an easier breath. How interesting that is, right? So our next step is to understand how your nervous system responds to threat and trauma. And I know some of you have done a lot of study in this, so you're very aware this will be a review. And we can always learn when we review, right? Think about how you can apply this. Think about how it's showing up just in this moment today and what you're seeing in yourself in your life. So trauma tends to show up individually as avoidance of intense emotions related to trauma. And this could be conscious, it can also be unconscious. For some reason with a capital U, unconscious. So this is where we just don't want to feel something because it's too much. So 2 examples, and there are infinite, of how we can avoid are through substance use or through dissociation, through going away, right? Also, our behavior can be impacted in trauma. We can avoid places or people or situations. We can avoid connection or vulnerability, especially if we're avoiding difficult emotions. I mean, everyone here has probably have you had the experience where someone calls you and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to talk right now just because what's going on. Like, I don't really want to go there. Or they're like, how are you? And you're like, I'm fine. How are you? Like, I don't want to talk about that right now. Let's talk about you instead. Right. Especially as caretakers, we're much more comfortable. Like, tell me about your day. Like, I don't want to talk about my crappy feelings. And all kinds of reasons for that we can make up. But just having difficult emotions, having changes in our nervous system, it can also, when our nervous system is dysregulated, we're going to talk about that now. That can make it hard to connect because we're really amped up, or we're stuck to the couch, or we're really depressed or anxious or angry. All those things can be how trauma shows up individually. Shout out to anyone who watched The Simpsons a lot in the 80s, because I'm using a few Simpsons graphics today. So what about collectively? It can show up as conflict, classic fight response, right? And important point about this is if there's something that's activated related to a trauma and we're in a fight response and we get into conflict, oftentimes the fight energy isn't about the conflict that's happening right now. It's about other things that happened a long time ago. And remember, this can be conscious or unconscious. So collectively, we might be feeling a lot more conflict because there's a lot of fight response from things that didn't happen right now, that happened in the past. So with that conflict can also come disconnection. Also that going away, if we're in avoidance or we're in dissociation, that can lead to disconnection. It can show up as a lack of empathy. Now, I know some of you here have been through trauma and you're like, I'm one of the most empathetic people in the world. And I'm going to ask you this, close the loop. Have you done some work? I think the answer is yes, right? When we learn to connect with and care for our own emotions, when we're able to recognize and move through really painful emotions within ourselves, that cultivates empathy. When we're not able to do that within ourselves, we might have judgment toward ourselves. We might spread that judgment out on other people. We might not be comfortable going into an emotion because it reflects something we've been through and it's too much. So you see the difference, right? So collectively, it can show up as lack of empathy when there's unresolved trauma that it's like, nope, can't go there, can't go there, can't go there. Oh, well, I can't go there with you. And I have all this anger, but I don't know where it's coming from. And it's going there. And I want to withdraw and I don't understand why. You get it, right? It can also show up as a general increase in mental health challenges. Now, trauma correlates with all kinds of different mental health challenges. Even when we just look at the state of our nervous system responding to threat, it correlates with anxiety and depression and other things. So trauma can show up collectively as a whole bunch of other mental health challenges popping up. So instead of one person fading away into the bushes, could be people getting into fights, people going to war, or people feeling disconnected emotionally or practically speaking. These are just some ways, okay? When things get stuck, there's typically two nervous system states underlying so many of our emotions that are related to trauma, right? So our nervous system, our brain, the nerves go all through the body. These are hyperarousal or agitation, anger, anxiety, hypoarousal, which can show up as shutdown, depression, or dissociation. Okay, so I'm going to keep this super simple for today. But when we experience something traumatic, we can go into hyperarousal in our nervous system or hypoarousal. That can manifest as all kinds of different bodily experiences, emotions. We can also avoid feeling those extreme states, right? We can avoid the initial experience. We can avoid things related to the initial experience. We can avoid our reactions as well, which can lead to us feeling disconnected from our bodies. And when something happens, if we're able to use our initial response to get safe, usually it moves through. But when a lot of things these days, we get all this information, but we're not actually in a 3D conversation, like we're on social media or we're watching a video or we're hearing something on a podcast on the news or something. And we're often not in an actual situation and 3D present moment relationship where we can use our responses to move in a direction of healing or actually just honor that response in the moment. So things can get stuck that way. So what do? We tap into our body's wisdom, right? And that, like I just said, we might even be avoiding our body at a certain point, like, oh, I don't even want to feel that. So it can be a process to come back to our body's wisdom, and we can create a trauma-informed movement and breath practice. Now, movement and breath are going to be accessible from different angles for different people. There's going to be different reasons for different times, but we can find something that supports our body, supports our breath, that moves us in a direction of healing or supports us even just accessing the present moment. So I want to ask for you, for the people you serve, do you see a capacity to transition between movement and rest? So going from movement to rest, or going from rest to movement. We can see this in individuals. We can see this in cultures, right? I'd say American culture is much more movement oriented. It's harder to find pockets of rest. Maybe a culture like Spain or Italy, where they have a pausa or they have a siesta. There's actual time in the day incorporated in the workday. Business is closed to rest, right? And then can we go from rest to movement? Can we move back and forth between these qualities? Okay, now here's Homer Simpson again. He's doing the wiggles on the couch. So that might be he was resting and this is his transition into movement. Maybe he's going to get up off the couch after that. We don't know. Maybe he's feeling hyperarousal and hypoarousal at the same time, stuck to the couch and feeling antsy, right? Point is, can we transition from one to the other? So what do you do to pick up your energy? Just be really honest. Like, let's say today you're having a flaggy day. You're like, oh, there's so much happening and I'm so tired and I have stuff I want to do, but I don't want to do it. What are your go-tos? Really common ones in this culture, actually all over the world. Coffee, right? Caffeine, caffeinated drinks. Another one that can be really helpful that sometimes we think of it as spending energy, but it can also cultivate energy is exercise, going for a walk. A lot of times, like lacing up your shoes is the hardest part, going out for a walk or a run, right? But once you finish that walk, or if you've gone running, usually feeling more energy. What do you do to bring your energy down? Really common one, alcohol. End of the day, happy hour on Friday, right? Really common one across cultures around the world. So caffeine and alcohol, people usually drink caffeine in the morning. They usually drink alcohol at night. There's some variation to that for sure. But what do you do? What are your tools to help you just bring it down? Just bring it down a few notches. Do you use your breath? Do you use yoga? Do you use child's pose? Probably. I know some of you. So let's think about helpful ways to bridge between movement and rest. And I want to say, in terms of our nervous system, what I talked about earlier, hypoarousal and hyperarousal, I'm speaking right now from like day-to-day energy, but we build those skills to also bridge into these more extreme experiences of energy. So if you have remember, resilience is coping skills, coping strategies, practice, rehearse, repeated habits. If you have skills to go, oh, I'm feeling a little up and I want to come down in a way that's healthy for me, feeling a little down and I want to get up in a way that's healthy for me. You have those skills. When something big happens, those are in place and you can reach for those, and you can cultivate other things as well to help bridge into a place where you feel more maybe comfortable in your body, able to access your emotion, able to get support. So we can bridge through yoga postures and sequences, right? From stillness into action, from action into stillness. So I know some of you might not be in an environment where you can do this. Some of you are, some of you aren't. So if you're in an environment where you can identify a simple movement that you need right now. So let's say like you're like, oh, I'm tired and I'm slouched and I want to feel more energy. Maybe you can stretch up or out or open your chest. And if you're a yoga teacher, like some of you are, you're like, maybe you want a chair pose or you want to do a whole sun salute. If you're feeling that need to move some energy, to get more energy flowing. We can also go from action to stillness. And this is more like, we can think of this as AM, PM yoga. I used to have that Rodney Yee and Patricia Walden, I think it was on VHS, VHS cassette, right? Going from stillness to action in the morning, going from action to stillness in the evening, right? So what do? Maybe you need this right now. Maybe you've had a really busy day, your head is full and you need to rest. One of my favorites, because I can do it right here on my desk, is to put my hands on top of each other and rest my head. Boom. And a little tidbit for yoga, when you pull the skin of your forehead down towards your nose, try it out, see how it feels for you. It tends to feel more soothing. For me, when I pick it up like this, it's like that surprised face, like, gotta do stuff versus, I used to use this on my daughter too. When she was really young, to help her go to sleep, I would just pet her forehead down and her eyelids would get heavy and then she'd fall asleep. Doesn't work as well now that she's almost 2. I do it and she's like, what? Mama, mama. So helpful ways to bridge. Interesting. Vinyasas in yoga have some, in general, are meant to build heat, right? So they'd be a little more moving into action, like warming the body. But they do have forward folds and back bends. Forward folds tend to be more soothing. Back bends tend to be more stimulating. One thing I'll say is we're not looking for some dynamic point. We're just looking to cultivate this capacity to move between states, right? The more we can do that in our daily life, the more we can build that to also incorporate when something traumatic happens and our system goes way up or our system goes way down. So yoga has lots of helpful ways we can bridge. We can also breathe to attempt to cultivate balance. And I was just teaching a workshop to students in my program the other day about the physiology of breathing. There's a lot behind this and the whys and the hows, but we can do something as simple as an equal inhale and exhale to cultivate balance. And sometimes breath isn't something that feels great or accessible, and that's okay if this doesn't feel helpful for you today. Just skip it. You can listen and we'll keep going from here. But if you'd like to try an even breath right now, you can exhale to clear, and I'm going to inhale, count to 3, exhale, count to 3. So let's exhale. Inhale for 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 3, 2, 1. And just take an easy breath. We'll do that one more time. Inhale for 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 3, 2, 1. Easy breath. So a balanced breath when we don't know what we need, right? Or we're not sure what someone else needs. Extending our breath a little. Because typically when we're in that state of hyperarousal, we're breathing really fast, sometimes very shallow. But there's like a kind of almost panic quality. When we're in hypoarousal, we're breathing really shallow, really slow, really faint. So finding that balanced breath can help us just get to that middle ground from, and this is, neurologically stuff that connects deep, deep within our brains. So soothing breaths, we can focus on our exhale. Now, I did this last night. I was up late. Well, I was up till like 9. And then I was like, kind of bring myself down. I took a bath. Isabella was already asleep. Alex was asleep too. And then I got in bed and I was like, I just feel awake. It's not really super common for me, honestly. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to focus on my exhale. Honestly, it's the last thing I remember from last night. I was like, okay, let me just do along. I think I did like 4 rounds, 3, 4 rounds while I was actually thinking about it. And I was out. So worked for me. Again, I have a practice of this for a long time. So my body's maybe picked up and learned. But something as simple as focusing on a long exhale, if that's comfortable, if it's accessible for you, clearing out. Whereas when we're needing energy, focusing on an inhale, maybe even holding the breath in. Now, for someone who's anxious and also wanting energy, I'd be a little careful, especially with things like breath of fire, which is a common yoga practice. I have seen people get panic attacks from that. So we're not going to do that today. But if you want to try for your next few breaths, clearing out with a longer exhale, maybe holding your breath in for a moment, lifting your chest, you can try that even right now. So we can breathe to cultivate present moment balance. And we can do this at any moment. The moment we become aware, oh, I'm feeling hyper, I'm feeling hypo, we can use our breath to start to cultivate that access, that dynamic access to our nervous system moving in different directions. Okay. So, how are we doing on time? Good. The last thing is to get support with the hard stuff. You really don't need to do this alone. I want to encourage you. It can feel, I know, especially in 2020, we were all feeling really isolated because we couldn't see each other in person. If you're someone who needs a lot of touch, most humans do, finding that with people that you do feel connected to in a way that feels safe, invited, supportive. So reconnecting can also be resilience, right? Through therapy, through learning and self-reflection, through deepening your personal relationships. We want to approach this slowly when we're talking about trauma, because remember, I mentioned earlier, one of the first things that happens with trauma is avoidance. So we want to approach it slowly because we're asking for connection. Asking for connection is the opposite of avoidance a lot of times, especially when we're connecting around something that was traumatic. So I say this a lot, but one of the common misconceptions when we're trying to support someone that's been through something really traumatic is like, tell me the story, what happened, I need to know. So much less important, right? Because that can just be overwhelming again. We want to just create a safe, comfortable space where we can connect with other people, where they can connect with us genuinely, right? So I love making connections. I don't know about you. So when we're looking to cultivate greater resilience, this is about habit. This is about repetition. This is about ongoing care and also getting support when there is a really significant trauma. We start with anchoring into a vision of health. Dreamstorm, go there. What would it look like for this to be healed? Can I parse out some details of that? Can I pull some of that, those emotions or those visions or those details into my present day, anchor into those? Can I really understand how I'm responding from a biological basis to threat or harm or trauma? Understanding our nervous system. And then can I create a trauma-informed movement or breath practice? Now, this could just be as simple, we mentioned earlier, as going for a walk. It could be Tai Chi. It could be swimming. It could be yoga. There's so many different ways, but really meeting, because there's such a body impact with trauma, meeting our body and responding in kind. And then getting support, right? You don't have to do this alone. So we practice these things. You can practice these things today. We practiced all of them already a little bit today together, right? And then getting support in an ongoing way when there's really hard stuff happening. So we covered a lot today. We talked about one way to resource yourself right now. You chose something. Where is it? Connect with it now. We went through the APA definition of resilience and what we can learn from the Lahaina banyan tree. It's not just bouncing back. It's not just this easeful, effortless response. It's investment, well-earned, habit, repeated, coping skills, all that stuff. It's worm casings in the case of the Lahaina banyan tree. It's 10,000 gallons of water and worm casings. And then we covered these 4 steps to help you root into resilience every day that I just covered on the last slide. So what we haven't covered yet is the Y4T certification, how it's celebrating 10 years. I'm going to turn to that in a moment here, and then we'll take some questions and resources, and I'll give away a copy of my book. Cool. So we're celebrating 10 years. I know so many of you here are Y4T students. So I want to send an extra shout out and love to everyone, but extra shout out and love to all of you who are learning this material again and again and deepening. I just celebrate it so much celebration for you. Love it. Love the love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Now, I know the work you're doing because I know you, and it makes me have so much faith in the world. Now, some of you on here I don't know as well, but I guess that you're also doing some pretty amazing things. So this program isn't for everyone, right? It might be for you if you're listening and we're just meeting, or if you've been thinking about doing it for a while. It's geared towards mental health professionals, counselors, therapists, yoga professionals, yoga studio owners, yogis, program directors, right? Maybe you're managing a program in a hospital or a nonprofit. Maybe you created your own program. Teachers, wellness providers, healing professionals. And I like to give a shout out to my pro healers out there. There are definitely people who come to this program who are like, I've been in therapy for 20 years and I know my stuff and I know my trauma and I just feel like this is right for me and I feel like I want to learn. And yes, you are welcome to apply and join this program. We've had a lot of pro healers go through as well. And what do people do after the program? Well, I could probably just drop into the chat and be like, what are you up to right now? And you could drop that in. But people are leading group therapy programs, teaching trauma-informed yoga to populations that are near and dear to their heart. Maybe that's veterans or sexual assault survivors, students, incarcerated populations, refugees, grandparents, all kinds of different people. People are bringing trauma-informed somatic practices into their one-on-one work. So this is where I do all my one-on-one therapy and small group. And so I have all the yoga stuff here, and we bring somatic practices that we go through in this program. I bring them into my work every day, and you can do the same. And sometimes for mental health providers, it's like, how do I get in? How do I use yoga in a session? And we talk about that. And a common question I just want to answer now, in case it's going to come in anyway, is like, do I have to have a yoga 200-hour certification? No, you can come through this program without that. Just know that we're not going to go over where your foot goes in every yoga asana shape. We're going to go much more broad and deep with the philosophy and with the general shapes. We're not going with like press down through your outer pinky toe type of instructions. You get those more in a yoga teacher training. So it's all about scope of practice, right? You can absolutely use the tools from this training in a mental health setting. Just you wouldn't be teaching a full yoga class and focusing on alignment, things like that, right? So also after the program, people often use this to educate decision makers and get funding for their programs because it's just two languages, right? Whether we're talking about yoga or we're talking about trauma recovery, it's really same, but different. And I love to communicate that truth through this program. And people also use it to deepen self-care and personal growth. So you might want to get certified with the Center for Yoga and Trauma Recovery. And this is what we cover. Week 1, foundations of health. Week 2, understanding trauma in a deep, deep way. Week 3, somatic psychotherapy and the nervous system. Week 4, fundamentals of yoga philosophy and practice. Week 5, principles of trauma-informed yoga. Week 6, advanced principles like dissociation and shame. Week 7, we do a research review. Week 8, you have a practicum. And the practicum is meant to give you that little boost to move into the next thing you're going to do after the program. This used to be a 6-week program when it started in 2015. And people at the end were always like, what? How do I love all this, but what do I do next? So the practicum is the answer to that question. What do you do next? You pick a practicum, you try something on, you learn from it, and then you're ready to take the next step from there. We have a cohort starting next Monday, March 10th. We have a welcome call at noon Pacific next Monday. And I'd love to invite you to join. If you haven't been through the program already and you're wanting to get certified, you're wanting to learn more, you'll get access to all 8 weeks plus weekly bonus content that I've been recreating in honor of the 10-year anniversary. We also have 4 live support calls for this cohort. The first one is the welcome call on March 10th. Those are all Mondays from 12 to 1 Pacific time. So close to this time that we're meeting today. Also offering an early bonus. So anyone who joins in the next 48 hours, you're going to get access to this program, but also the program I'm going to offer this summer. And that's going to be a live program. It'll give you access now, It'll give you extra support over the summer, the chance to review and deepen the material, and also extra time for your certification. So sometimes people like, if you know you're someone who sort of needs the extra time, you kind of lag on you get excited in the beginning and you lag on the finishing end of it. This might be a good time to join, because then you're going to have that extra support and the opportunity to extend it into the summer. Oh my God, so exciting, so exciting. I don't know if you all know, the character under the wow over here from the show Harlem. I love that show. It's been amazing. I binged it. It's already done. So if you're excited to learn more and you want to enroll, go to howwecanheal.com/ the letter Y, the number 4, and the letter T. That's howwecanheal.com / the letter 4, the number Y, the letter Y, the number 4, and the letter T, Y4T, Yoga for Trauma. To get more information and to enroll, if you go to howwecanheal.com, there's also a drop-down menu with training programs, and you'll see it there. Woohoo! Oh, wait, we got to come back for the confetti. We got to be here for the confetti. There you go, howwecanheal.com / Y4T. All right, we're doing great on time. So proud of myself. Something I work with, I'm always like, wait, well, we're just gonna a little more, but today we're gonna wrap on time. So I've got a giveaway. I'm gonna give away a copy of Yoga for Trauma Recovery Theory, Philosophy, and Practice. So if you want a copy of the book, go ahead and put the word me into the chat. And I'm gonna pull it up. Oh, you guys are lovely. Throw in emojis too. Oh, Heidi had to go. Okay, bye. Oh, nice. Okay, so my magic number. Okay, let me make sure this is right. Okay, I missed somebody. There we go. Patty Green. Patty Green? All right, so you can put in the Q&A box, or, oh, Carrie, you want a copy before? I love that. That's awesome. And so you just put, you're so honest, right? You could get 2 and pass it on. Patty, you are the winner. So go ahead and you can actually email y4t@howwecanheal.com and send us your best shipping address, and we will get that out to you. If you want to put it in the chat, you're welcome to do that now, because I think the chat is just going to hosts and panelists, so just to me. Or you can put it in the Q&A box. That would be private as well. All right, so let's say congratulations to Patty, and lots of love to all of you here, to Carrie, to Patty, to Jill, to Mona, to Deborah, to Heather, to Patty again, to Jamie, to Annalena, to Heidi, to Thea, to all of you. So much love. It's been so great having you here. I hope this is helping you start your week off on a positive note. And you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. If you want more inspiration and resources, I've created a whole podcast. We're about to start season 5 in April. You're welcome, Jill. Awesome. Oh, Thea, I'm so glad you're here. I love the love. Thank you all. It's so nice to be able to connect in this way. So more inspiration and resources on the How We Can Heal podcast. I was just teaching the other day, and I was just like, well, I interviewed this person and that person. Like, there's so many experts on there, and they're so amazing. We have a new season coming in April, and it's going to start to broaden a little bit and focus more, not just on clinical perspectives, but also personal journeys, and some athletes that I've been really lucky to connect with in my life who do things like run ultra marathons of hundreds of miles. So we're going to talking about how people use movement for healing across perspectives. Diane, you're the best. Stop it. Well, I love that you're here. So I highly recommend the show. There's an episode from last season with Donna Hicks on dignity that is just so important right now. And that was one of my, they're all favorites in different ways, but I love that episode. So I encourage you to listen, and you can watch on YouTube. You can listen on the podcast app or Spotify or anywhere you get your podcasts. And if I can ask, if you wouldn't mind, if you have a second, to leave it a review, especially if you love it. If you have feedback, I'm open to it. Send it to me. But the more ratings and reviews and listens, the more people will get access to these amazing tools. And that's why they're there, right? So if you could leave a review for the How We Can Heal podcast, love it, love it, love it. And you know what? We can figure out a gift for you. I don't know what it is yet, but if you send a screenshot of your review to y4t@howwecanheal.com, we'll send you a little bonus gift. How's that? Yay. Win, win, win. So thank you so much for being here. Again, you can send any follow-up questions to info@howwecanheal.com or y4t@howwecanheal.com. I am here to help. We are here to help. I hope this was helpful for you. I want to send you some extra love. I'm going to go full face to say goodbye. So lovely to be here with you today. Thank you so much. Sending you love to every corner of the world that you're in. I hope you have a beautiful evening, a beautiful morning, a beautiful day and week. And I hope to see you again soon. Lots of love. Thanks, everybody. Bye. You're welcome. Betsy, Patty. Yes. Blessings to you too. Oh, thank you, Annalena. That's so nice. Amazing. Oh, that's the best compliment I got all day. Thank you. All right. Lots of love. Take good care. Bye, everybody.